Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world, welcome to the new season. Welcome to episode 351, and welcome to our annual 9/11 episode. Now is most definitely a time to stay vigilant. Overnight, NATO planes shot down Russian drones over Poland. In the last week, America did a strike in Venezuelan waters. There are National Guard troops deployed in multiple cities around America, and the country seems more divided than ever. So enter the 24th anniversary of 9/11. I can think of no person to start off our new season and this conversation, an annual conversation, that would be better than our dear friend, a returning champion, the great and powerful Rob Serra is back on Independent Americans. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
For folks watching, you look younger. Uh, you have a great layer with FDNY and hockey shit, and a really cool, like, what do we call that? A hooligan hat? What do you call that kind of hat?
I
Like
think it's more of a newsboy hat than a hooligan hat.
Peaky
Um,
Blinders, maybe?
yeah, a little bit, you know,
So,
Newsies, little Christian
Newsy,
Bale.
you just got back from Washington, D.C. for your like 25,000th trip. We're going to talk about that.
Mhm.
Chris just informed me you've been on the show 6 times, so this will be your seventh visit, lucky number seven. Um, there's a lot going on in the country and the world, but let me start with a question that is maybe most important when I ask you of it. Rob, where are you and how are you? How is your health, man?
I'm in my studio here in Westfield, New Jersey, the beautiful Westfield, New Jersey. I'm all right. I'm about 3 months out now from another back surgery, so I've been dealing with that. That was pretty much my summer, was laying around healing up. But I'm back at it. So I'm doing all right. I gotta say, I'll stick with all right.
So, for folks who don't know, your first day on the job was 9/11. You have been an incredible advocate for all first responders and I think a conscience for America. And over the course of these 7 visits, we've kind of paralleled the evolutions in America through multiple administrations, through multiple fights on behalf of the 9/11 community. And I want to get to why you were in Washington, but I want to start with why I ask about your health. I think the New York Post said this week that 50,000 people are now dead from 9/11 related illnesses. Can you talk more about how you feel physically and how you think the community is doing? I want to get to the country and all that, but how are people doing? There's going to be a lot of people who are gone and can't be at the memorials tomorrow, the day this drops. There's going to be a lot of people who are sick and battling. But talk about your health 24 years later and how you think everybody's doing.
Um, a- as I said, I'm all right. I have 5 9/11 illnesses, but I'm managing them. And also dealing with my back issues. So I'm all right. My breathing isn't. I feel like getting slightly worse each year. This summer was particularly difficult, but I can't complain. I'm not battling things that other people are. And to that point, I think we're in the sweet spot of what we told Congress and anybody who would listen 20 years ago was going to happen. 20 to 30 years is when you're going to see all these cancers pop up, and it's happening. You know, pretty faster than we thought, actually. And a lot more aggressively than we thought, but it's happening. I mean, 400 tons of asbestos, man. That alone is enough to take most of us down. But you factor in the 160 somewhat other toxins, the ones that were created, and you know the pulverized dust and concrete and all that stuff. I mean, so that it could be any number of things. So we're right there. Where I think it's 48,000 plus with a 9/11 cancer at this point. We're well over the number of firefighters that died on 9/11 have now died from a 9/11 illness, and way over members of the NYPD have died from 9/11 illnesses. So we're right there. this is why we fought so hard 20 years ago when people still seemingly cared and thought about 9/11 as more than just a meme or a punchline in a Netflix routine. So, that it's you know, unfortunately,
Are
we
you
were
all right because you're not dead? I mean,
yeah.
like that's
Well,
kind of like the bar now, but at this point when we're all getting into our 40s and 50s and 60s and so many of our friends have died. You were in Washington. I don't know if you still had Ray Pfeiffer's wheelchair, but we're going through this like, iterations of people. Every time you go to Washington, there's fewer of you. And every time you go to Washington, the staff is younger. And now you have to sit across from people and staff members who weren't born on 9/11,
yeah.
right? I mean, so talk about what was it like to go to Washington? Every 9/11 is different. And I want to dig into that with you because you have such a smart take and so much experience. But what was it like this time going to Washington and how was it different from previous times?
Um, Let me just get to your initial question. I would say I'm all right because my kids think I'm all right.
Mm,
So if they're not seeing it, then I'm good, because there's other people who are, getting carried in and out of bed by their kids. So let's just start with
mm,
that. Those people have it tough. Um, Washington, man, it is a lot different. Um, yeah, we met with people who weren't born on 9/11 or were 1 or 2 years old. So 9/11 is just a distant, it's I liken it to like when I was a kid, talking to Vietnam vets. It was I could see how it was, how they were dealing with it, but Vietnam was that was a history book for me. So it was it, it's different than I've ever seen Washington. I think this is the fourth administration now that I've been lobbying with or against, and it's almost like we're not really lobbying against anyone or for it. Like everyone seems to support us. Everyone says, yeah, we're on board, but yet nothing gets done. Which I brought up to a staffer who is much younger than me. And I said, I don't, it's just quite frustrating because you keep telling me you're supporting us, but you won't co-sponsor the bill. You won't help us further the bill. I'll get to what the bill is in a second. And her response to me was, well, welcome to politics. And I don't know how old, she was probably 24 years old. And at risk of sounding like an old man, I started working in politics before she was born. I had my first job in politics in 1999 in London. So it's, it's hard to deal with people who don't even understand the way the world used to be, because the world is completely different now. So they don't understand even simple things like live TV.
mhm.
Like I tried to explain to him, like, no, my wife watched her father die live on TV. Like, there's no grasping that because nothing is watched live anymore. So a little thing like that is just symbolizes the changes that we've gone through. And if you don't, not everyone has lobbied in Washington, but basically you're trying to convince a staffer to convince their boss that something is important. They have their meetings and everyone says, what bills are on the docket or who came into the office and what they should be supporting. So if you can't even convince that staffer to bring it up to the boss, you're not getting anywhere. So the first job that you have is to connect with somebody who, I mean, fortunately, I have three teenagers, so I have an idea. Um, but it's difficult. And our bill, for those who don't know right now, is we're just trying to get additional funding for the World Trade Center Health Program. Um, the projections were made 10 years ago, and for whatever reason, they didn't anticipate 50,000 cancers by 2025. They didn't anticipate um, the number of people enrolling in the program, which they should have, but whatever, how it was back then. It was we were just taking what we can get, right? So we're looking for additional funding, and if we don't get that funding, what's going to happen is in 2027 they're going to stop enrolling new people into the program. Um, does that affect first responders? Not so much. Most of us were already in the program, or we were auto enrolled through the FDNY or NYPD or whatever. So it doesn't really affect us, but it affects the survivors more. the 20,000 school students who were down there, who are probably in their 20s or 30s now, and they live throughout the country. They might not even realize it yet. They should. So if let's say a 30-year-old comes down with cancer in 2028, um, they're kind of SOL. You know, they won't be allowed to enroll in the program. I'm sure the health insurance company is going to find a pre-existing condition from 9/11, so they're probably not going to cover it. So really, I fight is kind of for them at this point.
Mhm.
We're not asking for a lot of money. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to give the exact numbers, but it's around $150 million a year in our budget. $150 million. In the amount of time we've been talking, where do you think our country has spent that much money? You
Mm.
know, so it's not a lot of money.
That's one missile, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
and you're talking about 300,000 or 400,000 Americans who were lied to and told the air was safe to breathe, all for the purpose of keeping our country going and
mm,
getting us to the point where we are today, right? So
yeah.
it's a silly thing for us to have to keep going down there. And to your point, there's less of us. I'm not in Ray's wheelchair anymore. Our wheelchair was donated to the 9/11 Memorial, and I believe it's currently on display.
Mm.
So if you're down by Ground Zero, go check it out. It's there with some other stuff from our advocacy. But yeah, we have some new faces, some old faces. You know, there's probably 5 or 6 of us left from 10 years ago, and the rest, you know how it is. When
Yep.
one falls out, somebody steps up and fills the shoes. But yeah,
So you're still, I asked you to book this, and you're like, I'm going to DC again. I'm like, of course you are. Like you have been relentless and tireless, but it's also ridiculous to the utmost that this has to be required yet again. I mean, this might be, what is this, like our 10th fight, right? Like, I mean, how many different pieces of legislation all the way back to, when Rand Paul and other people were putting a hold on it. I mean, we've been through this with Jon Stewart and so many times, and it's almost become like you said, it's like a punchline. I mean, it's like if you want to look at how fucked up America is right now, Rob Serra is still going to Washington to ask for money for the cancers that people have for running into burning buildings, and I think it's always been a mirror on our society. And I always say every Veterans Day is different, and every 9/11 is different, right? Especially because of the politics of it all. And I don't want to go past that. And I want to talk to you about the kids component and teaching 9/11, which feels like my responsibility a lot more now than it used to. But I can't go past the politics because I was on TV last week talking about the fact that Laura Loomer is advising the president, and she's a 9/11 conspiracy pusher. RFK Jr. is the head of Health and Human Services. He's a 9/11 conspiracy pusher. Trump's going to go to, I guess, the Yankee game on 9/11. But I said to somebody yesterday, like, he might totally say it was a hoax this year. Like, that's entirely possible, right? Like, he might say it was an inside job. He might, like, the world we're living in now where the truth has gotten bended to such an extent, and the people who are bending the truth around this issue are now so close to the president that it feels like it's the last sacred thing to get turned upside down, right? Or maybe one of the next sacred things to get turned upside down. You've met with Obama and Biden and Trump and everybody else. I mean, talk about the politics of this year because I don't think you can separate it because now it becomes a political instrument for so many people, especially beyond the community.
well, as far as President Trump is concerned, I was there in the Rose Garden when he told us that he was at Ground Zero. Um, so if he's going to go back on the words he said then that wouldn't surprise me. But I've always maintained that I don't care what your theories are. I don't care who did it at this point. That's not my job. That's for other people to figure out. I don't care if it was an inside job. I don't. It really doesn't matter to us. What matters to me is that people are getting sick and dying. I know two things. Well, a few more than two things, but I know two things. Those towers were hit by planes. They fell down. Whether you want to believe in tin hat theories or jet fuel can't melt steel or there was explosions. I don't know. I don't care. Those buildings came down. It created a toxic hellhole. We were told that that hellhole was safe for us to operate in for whatever reasons. There's all conspiracies in that too. Where was it getting gold out? Was it opening Wall Street, which I'm sure Wall Street played a role in it. It was all those things getting America back, making it look like, tis a flesh wound. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
I don't care. All I care about is that we're sick, we're dying, and you lied to us, and you've been lying to us for 23 years. We don't have the money, we can't have all this bullshit. Like as far as the other stuff, the politics of it, as I said earlier, there really is no opposition. John Field said in a meeting, like we're fighting the boogeyman, and we kind of are. We're not really. It makes it different this time because there was always Rand Paul and Mike Lee with their stupid amendments and stupid arguments that were really just, as you know, that was just a dog and pony show to drag it out or get what they wanted. But now there really isn't much of that, and we're to the point where every single office that we've been in, we were told, yeah, we don't see any reason why our boss wouldn't support this. Or even if we spoke to the member themselves, they'd say, yeah, right, we support this. But yet they're not co-sponsoring, they're not putting it publicly. Um, and another change is that I've seen is they're starting to say the quiet parts out loud. We
Hmm.
had a chief of staff tell us we support this. We'd love to co-sponsor it, but we have to wait for the right time, and actually said the words until we get what we want. And I was like, I don't think you're supposed to be saying that in the lobby
Hmm.
with your constituents sitting here. There were people, you didn't hear that 10 years ago. People weren't saying that kind of stuff. And I think that's because the truth doesn't really matter much anymore. And I think if Trumplandia or whatever you want to call the last 10 years of our country has done anything, it's really just blurred the truth to the point where it doesn't even matter.
Hmm.
Um, I see it with even you have kids, you see it like the kids when they like when I was brought up, it was your word is the most important thing that you have, and your character is based on doing what you say or telling the truth. And if you got caught in a lie, like you were punished, you know? And that now it just seems like lying is how you do business. It's how you live life. It's just nobody cares. Um, they care more about how many likes they can get on social media more than they do
Hmm.
how many people actually like them. you know,
Yeah.
it's
Rob, can we talk about? I think this is really important because I've been saying this. There have been attacks on Venezuelan drug dealers. There's attacks on the constitutions. There's attacks on people's rights. But the most important and consistent attack is on the truth,
right.
right? Bending the truth, saying what you saw is not really what happened, or you didn't see the right thing. Here's the other thing you should see. Here's what happened, right? And that's true on everything from Iran strikes to January 6th, right? I mean, all the way through. And now I think our kids are growing up in a time where they don't know what the truth is or what is a reliable source. And the 9/11 discussion is a really important one. I give our public school teacher a lot of credit. A couple days before school opened, she took all the faculty to the museum. And the museum's been doing more and more outreach to schools and to teachers. And I think the museum has done a brilliant job and is a fantastic teaching tool. But I don't think there is an official curriculum for 9/11 even in New York City. And so until recently in our school, they weren't being taught 9/11, right? My son asked me today, why don't we have 9/11 off? And I said, well, I'm kind of glad you don't, because then you have to be together and think about it and talk about it. And for us, it's really a mind fuck because we're a quarter mile away, right? Like we see the parades coming in, we see the motorcycles, we hear the bagpipes, right? And a lot of these kids have no personal connection to it. Their families don't have personal connections to it. So, there's a real moment where they hear about the buildings that used to be right there, but they only saw them in pictures. And I wonder what you think is the right way to teach 9/11. And I'll share one other bit. So my boy is 10 now, and he's really interested, right? And he read the I Was There books, like these kids' books. I was at D-Day. I was at 9/11. And his teacher reached out to me and said, I know you're a first responder. Would you be comfortable coming in and talking to the kids? And I said, I don't think I want to put that on my kid because I don't want him to be the guy, the kid who has the dad who is, the expert on this. And I also thought of you and other people who have been teaching this so much. But then I also went a step further and said, there's a curriculum now. The museum has digital assets to teach this in a way that can probably do an even better job than me. And I give this teacher a lot of credit. My son was still curious, and she gave him the story of the men with the red bandana, right? Which is such an iconic story. But that book is at the museum, and I think the museum is doing a good job of trying to reach out to teachers who show interest. But there's no formal curriculum on 9/11 in this country. So how do you think we should be teaching 9/11 to the kids who weren't born yet?
Um, I agree with you. I don't want to see it become a holiday for that purpose. Someone actually asked me the other day, how come it's not a holiday yet? And all I could think of was because Jeff Bezos hasn't thought of what to call it. Because that's what it would become. It would become a sale on Amazon. It would become, discounts. You know what I mean. It would just
A
be
3-day weekend.
commercialized like everything else,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, like Veterans Day or Labor Day even.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it, there's people like there were construction workers working by my house on Labor Day, and I was just like, "What? It's Labor Day, like
Right.
But
Right.
and I think that's what it would become. So I think having them in school, if it's a weekday, is probably best. If we can come up with a curriculum, I think the museum was probably a good place to start. Um, there are a lot of memoirs and books out there about 9/11. There's a lot to pick from. A lot of FDNY and first responders have written books, like my brother. So there's plenty of them out there. There's plenty of podcasts. There's plenty of interviews. There's plenty of material for teachers to pick from. Um, but I think to your point, it's kind of been muddied so much that I think people are afraid to teach it because they're afraid of all the other discourse that's going to come out, all the conspiracies and all the nonsense. So I think people get afraid of that. But again, I don't really know what the rest of the country does because around here, most of the schools teach it because they have to.
Right.
Everyone was affected. Every town in New Jersey or Staten Island or the outer boroughs has a memorial for all the people there that were killed. Everyone has a personal connection, so um, they kind of have to teach it. I was happy. I think we were in a Texas office, and there were three young staffers sitting there, and they told us that every 9/11 they have a service. They go out, they raise the flag in the morning. They have a service, and they spend the whole day learning about 9/11. So that's Texas. So that's good, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
one of the states that wasn't directly affected. So that was good to hear. The other states, I don't know. I mean, I guess there should be some sort of national, you know, curriculum or handout
Yeah.
or something. But
Yeah. I mean, it's something I'm gonna push this year when I'm doing media, especially. And I think, especially with the mayor's race happening here in New York, like if New York City can't teach it, right? If Washington and Northern Virginia can't teach it, then I think we've got a major problem just because of the proximity. Like it's not, I don't know how you can grow up in, Hawaii and not know about Pearl Harbor, right? I mean, it's literally in your soil. And this is happening as they're doing things like digging up parks and doing, threat assessments for health exposures. And I want to make sure we give a shout out to Lila Nordstrom from Sty Health, who's been doing so much great work for the kids. Shout out to your brother, who also gave me this shirt from Ladder 20, I think, way back in the day.
yeah.
Um, and so many others that are like living teachers. But I want to ask you something else, Rob. I think it's getting harder for me to process and to kind of deal with as I get older because I think I feel more isolated in my experience because so many people have died and older folks who are impacted by it have died and the kids have come up and I'm careful about how I process it. But I also realize, like I said to my wife yesterday, I realize really this year the sirens are a trigger for me. Like the sirens in my neighborhood lower are constant, especially this time of year. And every year I forget that. And every year I say, maybe I should leave on 9/11 because what I remember, not just about 9/11, but the weeks afterward were the sirens. Every time they pulled a body, every time they sent somebody down, you heard
Mhm.
the sirens go through the entire city almost all night long, right? And
Yeah.
that was a trigger for me. So I always feel, and I want to talk about this with you, part of me feels like I should be there all day, right, at ground zero with the president, and then go to O'Hara's and stay there till the sun comes down. And there's another part of me that wants to go to Idaho on a mountain and just like blink and have it be over, right? Like I want it, I dread it in some ways. I want it to be over, so that I can get past all that emotional baggage. Can you talk about how you feel about it and how you think about that?
Um, it's quite ironic what I'm going to say, and just so your listeners know, we didn't discuss this previously. I'm going to the mountains tomorrow. I'm not going to O'Hara's because last year I would same thing. I never really make a plan on 9/11 anymore. My wife goes to her mother's house and her family does the thing, and I've done that sometimes. I've gone to Ground Zero. The last 5 or 6 years I've been doing interviews because of the Bills. But last year I went to O'Hara's for the sundown. I went to the sundown where the pipers go and they play beautiful songs and it used to be for us, right? It was
Yeah.
to lift us up. And now it's turned into a tourist attraction and it's
Yeah.
filled with people who weren't there or whatever. And I went to O'Hara's and it was filled with firefighters and first responders from other places around the country and they were in dress uniforms with their shirts untucked, their hats on backwards, ties sideways, getting drunk like it was St. Patrick's Day. Um, and I was sick to my stomach,
Yep.
and I
Yep.
actually said something, and I was with my friend who's a captain on the FDNY, but he wasn't in uniform. And he actually went up to a couple of the FDNY guys and said something to them like, if you're going to do this, take the uniform off, take the shirt off, take it, don't disrespect what happened. This isn't a party,
Right.
and we're firemen are all for tip of one back, to celebrate the boys, but that ain't it. We're not here to. It was like like a pickup scene. Like that shouldn't be what O'Hara's is. That shouldn't be anywhere near Ground Zero. And if you're out drinking in your uniform, no matter what day it is, um, I was never in the military, but you can't look like a sloppy mess. It's just
You
this.
you and I have spent, I think, at least two 9/11s together. Once I think we went to O'Hara's, or it was close to 9/11, and went to O'Hara's, and you put your finger on something that I couldn't articulate, which is like I used to go into O'Hara's because I knew people in there, right? And you'd see the look, and people would look at you and they know, especially you and me and other guys who've been at the press conferences and we've been on TV and we've talked about it publicly. um, but yeah, it didn't feel the same. And O'Hara's, I think, is a living museum in and of itself. And for those who don't know, it's the Irish pub right next to Ladder 10, right south of Ground Zero. If you haven't been there, you should go check it out. It was a helpful teaching tool for my kids. I remember the first time I took them in there, and they want to go in there and see the patches, and I took them through. But I realized, like, when I was teaching it, there was a good percentage of people in there who weren't really processing it and were just kind of watching the Yankee game,
Right.
right? But I think I think we're all struggling with how to be the carriers of the flame, right? In this time, when it feels like folks are tuning out. I mean, they're probably not going to broadcast it on TV all day tomorrow like they used to.
Maybe locally. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but I think they
Nationally.
do locally, right? For those who don't know, and like
Yeah.
WNBC, I think,
I think most of the local stations
yeah,
carry it.
they carry the exact broadcast from like that morning through what, like 11 o'clock or something, and then they go to the memorial.
Well, they
They
do the
usually
reading
do
of the names and
reading of
they
the
air
name.
that and all that. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, and everything that we're talking about is what led me to my decision to not go there.
yeah.
And I've been asked for years. I went to high school up in Lake Placid, New York, which is in the Adirondacks, home of the 1980 and 1932 Olympics. Um,
All right.
and I still have friends up there. My teachers still teach there. It's one of those family type. It's a prep school, but it's more of like a family type atmosphere. And they've always asked me, if you ever want to come up and talk to the school, talk to the students about it. And this year, it just kind of worked out where I was like, you know what, it seems like the right place for me to go, get out of here, and we're going to do a little Q&A, and I'm going to talk to the kids who weren't born yet and give them my perspective, and
Yep.
I think maybe it'll have a little bit more of an impact because, I was them 30 years ago. But so that's what I'm going to do.
And it's okay to celebrate too, right? I mean, it's like you and
Sure.
I, one time, I did this many years. You were on my roof. We did a celebration of life dinner, right? Like, to remember what happened. We would ask everybody, and this is something I always wanted to scale, but you can have a dinner with your family and you can say, where were you on 9/11? And the folks who were alive can share where they were and what they saw. And you and I were there. I think, it was a wide range of people. I think Pat Ryan was there, who's now a congressman. I think Wes Moore was there, who's now the governor. But then we also had, just friends of mine and other people who had been impacted in different ways. And I think that was a powerful thing. But I got to tell you, like, I didn't have the emotional reserves to organize it this year. And I really, I just kind of want to be with the boys on the football field,
Yeah.
like that. I want to be throwing the football around and thankful that I'm not dead, right? Like, and try to teach them um, about what happened in that day and the full truth of it, right? And the magnitude of it. And I feel like my parents' generation teaching Vietnam because it's so complicated and it's so twisted, and now it's become so misunderstood that I feel like I have that obligation to make sure at least my boys get it, you know?
Right. Well, and I think that was also the missed opportunity by our government by forcing us to fight for healthcare and all this stuff over the last 20 years because they muddied it, and that's why the history of it is so complicated because it didn't end on 9/11, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we went to war for 20 years, which is a whole nother discussion, but we also fought our own citizens who were affected by it for 20 years. Yeah, our government did that. They admitted it, and then they continually, now what, 24 years later, we're still having the same discussions. So back to what we were saying about teaching it. I mean, how do you teach it without teaching that part of it? Because that's what our kids need to learn from also.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, there's a report last week that Trump wants to take over the museum, right? And he's taken over the Smithsonian, he's taken over other places, and essentially pushed to change history. I don't know. Maybe he would, maybe he doesn't like Bloomberg or he doesn't like Tom Hanks. I mean, there's all these people now that are too woke, right? And it's like this punitive thing. But the museum doesn't rely on a lot of federal funding, but it's also, near federal land. I don't know how they could try to split this, but I mean, it feels like this is going to get politicized too this year.
Well, I mean, he's been involved with the museum since his first term. He gave them a large sum of money during COVID to keep them running. So it's not like this is new.
Mm.
He I think it was like $2 million that they got from
Did
the
he?
from the during whatever it was, the PPP or whatever.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
so he already got his foot in the door there. I mean, I can't speak for his ego or what his reasons would be, but it might go back to the stuff he said to us in the Rose Garden. Maybe it's to try to speak uh, speak his truth into existence. It could be something like that. I don't know what other intentions he could have, but I mean, he's not going to be around forever anyway.
Mm.
So it's not like it's not. There's only so much he can do.
Can I ask you one more thing? You and I have talked about so many related issues over the years. Remember Live Golf,
Hmm.
right? Like I
I
felt
still
like,
haven't watched golf, by the way.
yeah, but I felt like that was a moment where you and I and others said, okay, this is fucked up, right? And many in the 9/11 community had something to say about it. Some people didn't care. Um, but there have been moments where I felt like the veterans community could finally get rolled, right? And I felt like that was a moment where the 9/11 community kind of got rolled, right? And once you get rolled, then you're kind of like down a couple notches and your political power is just different. Do you feel like we have jumped the shark and we
Yes,
don't have the political power and we never will again have the political power we used to have?
yes. Um, for all the reasons we discussed earlier, from the staffers to Netflix. I mean, I said it tongue in cheek, but it's true. I watch a lot of stand-up comedy, um, and nearly every stand-up routine has a 9/11 joke. Nearly every one. And some of them are from native New Yorkers from Staten Island and Brooklyn, and they're making jokes. Um, anyone outside of Pete Davidson should kind of treat it with a little bit more reverence. Pete could say whatever he wants because he's dealing with his own shit. So if Pete makes a 9/11 joke, go ahead. He's part of the team. But anyone
For
else,
folks
like,
who don't know, Pete Davidson's father was a firefighter who was killed on 9/11.
right.
Yeah.
So, if you ever watch those roasts and Pete's there's usually a couple of 9/11 digs at him, which is all right. Because if he's all right with it, then I'm all right with it, right?
Yeah.
But it's true. You turn it into a punchline, and I mean, you go on social media, there's constant memes, and even on stuff that has nothing to do with 9/11, you'll see memes and responses that refer to it, and it's a joke. And I think the more you desensitize people to anything, the less value and power that it has. Um, Also, I think just time in general, right? You know, the further you get away from something, the less it means to the people that it didn't affect. So
Mm.
I don't
And that,
know.
there are some traditions that have lived on and I think are important in kind of grounding people. Like I mentioned the man with the red bandana, which I think is such a powerful story, right? And his story um, has been echoing, like Wells Crowther, right? Was his name, Wells Crowther, and he was a Boston College grad. So Boston College football does the red bandana game, right? And I think that's a really powerful teaching moment to talk about the helpers. There's a Tunnel to Towers run, which keeps getting bigger every time. And I think at the end of the day, like to see that many people at least taking that much time to reflect and remember is really important. Um, I want to ask you kind of a final question here, Rob. Like, every year is different. I hope you'll join me every year or as often as possible to reflect on this stuff because I think you're really like a keeper of the flame and a conscience on this and so many other issues in this country. But, here it is, 2025, 24 years later. What do you want folks to remember? When we say never forget, what do you want them to remember about 9/11?
Um, I think the man in the red bandana is a perfect example. One of my main concerns with the direction that we're heading, with social media and AI and less social interactions is this generation going to be able to produce a man in the red bandana? Are we going to be able to produce people who care more about the greater good than they do about themselves and what's best for them and what's going to get them clicks and likes? I mean, you see all the stunts that are pulled on TikTok. Is that generation going to be able to do what the previous generations have done? Not just the 9/11 generation, but you know, the World War II generation and World War I, all the way back. So I don't know if we're going to, and that was part of my arguments. Um, for the last 20 years with Congress was, what example are you setting to the future generations if you don't take care of the people who stepped up to help? Not that you need to be incentivized, but you're kind of teaching people to take care of themselves first, because the unwritten agreement between, you know, me and the city of New York was, I'm going to do what I got to do, and I might die, I might lose a limb, I whatever, I might get burned, but you're going to take care of my family if that happens, right? You're going to take care of me and my family, and I'm not going to be, you know, brushed aside, and I'm not going to have to fight for you know for what I should be compensated with. And I think by forcing this, and 24 years later we're still not really taking care of those people, I think you're setting a bad example. Do you want people hesitating, when there's an emergency because they see what happened to us? Like, to me, the lasting image that I have from 9/11 is watching Lou Alvarez testify before Congress. It- Weeks before his death. If you saw Lou before that, he was a giant. He was bigger than you. Muscles, big, strong, um, and he was 120 pounds and dying. To me, that's unacceptable. That's how he was treated, and that's how the Vietnam veterans were treated, and all the way back. So when I think about 9/11, that's what I think about. I think about what that means for the future generations and how they'd be able to handle such an attack, you know, because we're going to get attacked again. I mean, it's only, you know, I wouldn't say a matter of time, but you know, it's just the way the world works. You know, we've been at war since humans, you know, started walking. So, you know, as far as the day itself, I just hope that people take a second to realize that you know, your life can change in an instant. Um, you know, you know, even if you weren't affected, I mean, like I think about it all the time, how much my life was sent in a different direction just because of that day, and it really, you know, I didn't lose anyone close to me at the time, but it completely changed the direction of my life. Um, I don't know. I know I'm going off the rails here, but
No,
it's
you're
hard
on the rails.
it's hard to discuss because you know it's just every year it actually, like you said, it actually like gets worse. Like it feels like the further you get from it, the more I realize how fucked up it actually was, you know.
Mm,
Especially as my kids get older and I picture my kids
yeah.
going through it, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know, it's become 9/11, you know, used to be something that it kind of everybody was talking about. And now for me, it's kind of like the war. It's like I only want to talk about it when I want to talk about it. And in the places I don't want to wear a big hat that says war veteran. I don't want to wear a big hat that says like 9/11 first responder because sometimes I don't want to fucking talk about it. And sometimes I'm not ready for it, right? But I also know that I have a responsibility and I have to teach the next generation. And, you know, I think about Lou Alvarez too, and I think about so many others, but I also think about the people that were forged in fire and have inspired us like you and like Lila and like so many others and like Ray, right? And you came out of that. And I think that that is an inspiration. And I'm honored to know you. And I hope that people will see that, you know, you still represent the spirit and determination and grit of this country because you're still fucking fighting. And you're going to be fighting until your dying day. But I'm also glad that you're teaching and that you're going to Lake Placid and that hockey season's starting soon.
Yes.
And you asked, you know, are they making people like the man in the red beret, the red bandana? They are. Your kids are awesome. Your kids are fucking. I watch them. I see you, and I'm so happy for you and your family. And I can't wait to see what your kids are gonna do, man. Because just like you, they've been forged in this fire, and we're counting on them. They got to save the world now. No pressure, right?
Yeah. Well, I think Frankie's coming for your job though, so you better watch
You know
out.
what? For those who were around when we had the Firefighters podcast and Frankie's special vignettes, Frankie is coming, and the Sarahs are coming, and your wife is awesome, and your whole family is awesome, man. And I just thank you for all your leadership. You know, Paul Buca told me about Medal of Honor recipients. Every time they tell their story, it hurts. And every time you tell your story, it hurts. And that in and of itself is a form of public service and sacrifice and leadership. So you keep doing it, man. And we're grateful for you. And I look forward to seeing you at a. We ever going to go to that beer garden? For folks, there's a fucking beer garden at 9/11. Are you and I going to go there one day and have a beer, or do we not have a beer? What do we do? Like, I don't know if we should sit there and just get free beers forever or we should boycott it. Because I walk by it all the time and I always think of you. I'm like, there's a fucking beer garden on
Um,
Ground Zero. Is it? I don't know if it's great. Maybe it's great. Maybe it's terrible. I don't know, but it's fucking weird. And you're one of the only guys I can talk to about it.
yeah, I still don't know. I don't understand who greenlit that, but maybe we should go there and have a beer. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, well, maybe we'll do this conversation there next year. How about that? Or
All
not?
right.
But I love you, man. I'm grateful for you, folks. Thank you for supporting Rob for all these years. Continue to support him and the Ray Pfeiffer Foundation. Any other organizations or causes you want to give a shout out, man?
Uh, I think you nailed it.
The hockey team,
Contact
the hockey
the
team.
FDNY hockey team,
Yeah.
Northwood School in Lake Placid, New York. Check it out. It's one of the top um, hockey prep schools in the country. Uh, you know, we have produced, I don't know, 40 or 50 Olympians in all various winter sports. NHL players, check it out. Uh, check out Renew 9/11 Health. and see if your member of Congress is a co-sponsor of HR 1410. We're at 83 co-sponsors right now, and we're trying to get over 100 by 9/11. We'll see, but just help us force them to just take care of it because I really don't want to go back down there again. So please check that out. And besides that, just be nice to each other, man. Stop fighting on Facebook and go out and have a beer with your friends. That's what I would say.
I still think you should run for something. I hope you'll run for the governor for New Jersey is up now, but maybe Staten Island losing you is like when they lost to Staten Island Yankees. Like the Ferry Hawks are okay, but losing Rob Serra is a tough one for Staten Island. So, but it's New Jersey's gain, and I hope you will run as an independent for something in New Jersey at some
Well,
point
we'll
soon.
see where I end up. Staten Island may lose their district in general, so
Yeah.
um, but we'll see. Maybe
Shout out to Staten
figure it
Island
out.
and one of the best minor league ballparks in the country. If you ever
Beautiful,
in New
right?
York, take the ferry. We were there a couple weeks ago for Ezra's birthday. Shout out to Ezra, Rivers' little buddy. We took a bunch of kids over there. You can watch the Kung Fu Panda, and it's pretty fun. But you're awesome, dude, and thank you to everyone. We're back with a new season. Please support our Patreon community. Please spread the word. If you're watching on YouTube, like and share. It's a really important fall. We got a lot of important conversations coming up on independent Americans. But look for the helpers. They're out there, and there's no finer example than our friend Rob Serra. Until next time, thanks for listening. Stay vigilant.